Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar video. In this one I want to do a bit of a preview ahead of Avatar Quest for Balance, the game that is coming out on Friday. Yes, we are just 3 days away from this game and we still know next to nothing about it. So I'm going to attempt in this video to sum up all of the content. We'll go through all of the different trailers we have, an interview that we have, and some other stuff like the achievements to try and figure out as much as we can about what this game is actually about and if it's actually going to be good. Because I think a lot of the opinion stuff that's out there so far about this game is just the general, it looks bad, moving on. Whereas I think there could be something to this game. And I think as an Avatar fan, I'm going to be getting this game and I think I'm going to have some fun with it. Am I expecting it to be a super strong game? No. But I think it should be good enough that I get some enjoyment out of it, because it is the Avatar game in a way that we should have got probably 15 years ago. And while you maybe can question, does this game look like a game that came out 15 years ago, that's something to be addressed. It is something that we haven't had as a fandom in a while, and as someone who covers everything Avatar, the fact that we're getting a video game, a full-on new console Avatar video game, is not something I can ignore. So my plan is that I do have a copy of the Switch version on the way, and I'll probably get the PC version to stream as well. And that is my plan. I do plan to stream the game in full over the course of probably 1, 2, 3 live streams over the weekend. Again, it depends on when I can get a copy of the game and then timing it out. I'll have all that stuff organized on the channel later on in the week. But I also will be doing a video review of the game probably for next week once I actually get through the game and stuff like that. And that review should help people to figure out like if the game is actually good or not. So, with that out of the way, let's actually jump in and cover what we know. So, of course, we've seen the cover for a while now. It's very nice new art. I actually think the cover looks pretty good. I'm glad it isn't just kind of older stock pieces of art. They actually did get new art for this. It looks very good. Obviously, there's a bunch of screenshots that we've all seen multiple times before that basically show off nothing about the game. I think it's pretty bad that these are the only like official screenshots really out there for the game. But anyway, so the game is listed as an action-adventure game, but a lot of other material seems to suggest that it's actually more of a adventure puzzle game with action thrown in as well. They are kind of de-emphasizing the action part of it so much and really want to more focus on puzzle solving in the environment as being kind of what the game is mostly about. So they do cover the idea that, you know, you can solve challenging environmental puzzles, as I said. You can experience the story. There is mastering the elements. There is the combo-based stuff, which we'll get to over here. You can play the story solo or with a friend because it does have a co-op mode. Maybe a little bit surprising given what the level of this game seems to be. But they seem to be emphasizing that the co-op mode that the game has is a bit of a kind of special feature, kind of. So yeah, a 1 to 2 player co-op campaign with 18 chapters to cover the adventure. So 61 episodes of Avatar, 3 books of Avatar covered across 18 chapters. Now, we don't know what a chapter is in terms of how many levels there are inside. Does that mean there are 18 different, like, locations? Or is that levels? It's hard to say because, you know, the first chapter could be episode 1, 2, and 3. The second chapter of the game could just be episode 4, like Omashu. And then you go on that way and you kind of are grouping episodes together certain times, moving on. But does doing that lower us from 61 down to 18? I'm not quite sure. So are we going to be skipping over certain episodes like The Great Divide and stuff like that? Because you think in a game coming out like this far on after the show has come to an end, there's nostalgia for almost every aspect of Avatar, so why not cover everything? So that'll be a big thing when the game actually hits, is just like, why have they skipped content in a way on a game that's coming out this far on afterwards? But We'll see about that. So yeah, do the Aang's original adventure, replay each chapter. So the game, of course, is replayable, makes sense. Play as 9 iconic characters, including Aang, Toph, Sokka, and Katara. We'll get to what we know of the other characters in a moment. There are mysteries, challenging puzzles, using your bending and other abilities, elemental abilities, of course. But of course, you have non-bender characters like Sokka here as well, and hopefully more as we go on. So yeah, complex bending combos. So there is fighting action in the game. You will be dealing damage to enemies, but we'll get to the interview where they mention that that's not really the focus. It is a mix of combat and puzzles, and you will also be taking down bosses as well. So makes sense completely. So like I think I mentioned this earlier on, didn't I? Or did I? It's coming out on Switch, PS4, PS5, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X, and PC on Steam. That's the full lineup there. So there is that. The Steam page doesn't have too much else to say. Notably, it's still not available for pre-order. I guess it will just launch and you'll be able to get it. Here are some of the specs kind of that they're suggesting that you should have here. 16 gigabytes of available space for the PC version. I think the Xbox version mentions that the file size is going to be in or around like 8.5 gigabytes, so not a huge game when it comes to that. But also graphically, this doesn't seem like it's pushing the envelope too much. So, and then we don't know the scope of the game, so it's hard to say. Like 8 gigabytes could actually be quite a big game for what it actually is, but otherwise there's not really too much kind of else to say about that. They do say, online co-op here, shared / split screen co-op, so that is kind of notable there. Otherwise there's not too much else to say there. Then we get into some of the trailer stuff. So I'll have the sound off for all of these, but let's go through the trailer. So this is the announcement trailer. This is the one that everyone has seen probably. So you can see here's Agna Kel-A, the capital of the Northern Water Tribe. This is based on this. Is that an Omashu shoot, or is that one of the tracks of Ba Sing Se? I think this is more meant to be Ba Sing Se, I believe. So there's that. There's Fire Fountain City from the Runaway episode. So you can see there's some action. There's Agna Kel-A again. And you can see that, like, it's not gameplay as such. The camera's kind of pulled out a little bit more. But it's a nice shot to give you a sense that, like, visually, I think that looks kind of cool. Because it can be often hard maybe to visually get across the idea of a place made mostly of ice and only really using whites and blues to get the kind of colors across, but that actually looks like a nice shot there. So I think visually the game is doing kind of the best that it can, in that it's capturing the show's art style and putting it into the kind of 3D way that you would expect. Does it have the fidelity, I suppose, that you really maybe want in a 2023 game? Perhaps not, but I don't think the game looks super bad. Like, some people are saying it looks like a PS2 game, and it really comes across as like, have you played a PS2 game in a while? I don't think it looks that level. You can see some of the puzzle elements, the kind of almost gadgets in the environment here, the mechanisms, which again highlights that is what it seems like, at least in quite a few sections of the game, you will be mostly messing around with here. So there's more puzzle elements. This is a puzzle element. There's Zuko, bending, mysteries, and you can see the different locations here. There's Kyoshi Island, which again looks pretty nice. There's UA. There's stuff from the invasion, right towards the end of the invasion as well. So you can see like Sokka's in his armor, Aang's in his Book 3 outfit. So they're doing a lot of the kind of basics kind of required here. And you can see here, like, okay, the main path is just to cross here. But then you can go off to the side, and there seems like there's some sort of a mechanism up here to maybe go over here. There's potential in this, even if it's maybe not huge potential. Embrace Your Destiny, Avatar State Aang, Book 3 Aang. There's Aang using the different elements, of course. Western Air Temple, because it's upside down. There's Heibai, there was Zuko, we just passed Suki there. Cabbage Merchant, of course, is in. This is a bit of an interesting one here, the Momo shot. to highlight this, that there does seem to be this animal racing, almost like mini game or something like that, quest within the game, which we'll get to in a second. There's Azula and Ty Lee. Here's Combustion Man. Here's what seems to be the cutscenes of the game. So you can see, like, we're going for, like, okay, the graphics have kind of improved a little bit here. The detail is up compared to the gameplay segments, but the problem here seems to be that both characters here should be battle damaged in this sequence. This is a dead Aang, effectively, and this is a Katara who's just been through a vicious battle. Whereas this is just it's book 1 Katara, when it should be book 2 Katara. And you get it to a certain degree of, like, okay, that's the way it's going to work, but that speaks to, like, here's your first probably, like, true example of just, like, yeah, okay, they're not putting in the full level of detail that they probably should be here. The fact that, like, Aang is meant to have been hit in the back with lightning just prior to this scene doesn't come across that well. So that's unfortunate. But, you know, some of this stuff is pretty cool overall. Visually, like, it actually looks quite good. So, you know, it could be an interesting way to experience the story. Beyond that, we have these 3 30-second trailers. One is a boss puzzle trailer, one is a co-op trailer, and one is just a puzzle trailer. So the boss puzzle trailer just highlights that the bosses, a lot of them will just be done through kind of puzzle mechanisms. So you can see Long Feng, Heibai is going to be a boss. So you can see here the idea of, like, okay, with Heibai, you have to move the boxes onto the specific sections, and then you launch the boxes at the environment, and that's how you do damage to Heibai. Makes sense. With Combustion Man, it seems like you have to slowly move your way up under cover to get really close to him. Then you earthbend him into position, and that's how you do damage. Then you have sort of the likes of what seems to be like the Zuko and Azula boss fights, which are more of a arena-based, probably more like what your classic combat is in this game, where it's demonstrating you actually have to fight, dodge their attacks. But probably best seen there with this Zuko one from very early on in the series. He's going to have a specific kind of patterns of attacks. You have to, like, jump over them, get in there, hit when you can. You know, classic game fashion, of course. There's the Azula fight from the caverns, of course. And then, of course, Ozai is going to be the final boss battle. Which I'm very interested to see how they do that final boss battle. Because they could go real crazy there and just have you go, like, all out. Like, full on, like, almost, like, new battle systems because of how different that fight is compared to everything else. But we'll see how they do it. The co-op trailer here also highlights kind of puzzle solving in the game. So you'll see again a lot of the idea of, like, these gadgets, like the fire shooters and stuff like that. You can block it with earthbending to roll this stone past it. Now, why potentially the stone is blocked by a stream of fire, we don't exactly know, but, you know, it is what it is. The classic puzzle here that they seem to show off quite heavily of lift someone up on a water-bending ice block so that Sokka can hit the bell with the boomerang. You know, makes sense. Classic kind of game type stuff. Then there's, like, this kind of puzzle solving stuff with the lights there. These are more kind of platforming, I guess, puzzles going through the rotation stuff here. And then there's stuff like this, which I think could get to a level that is actually quite interesting. Like, all these kind of, like, contraptions and gadgets built into the environment where, like, it's quite... The levels to it, the height of this is actually kind of cool. Of, like, you lift a character up here, then they get up onto this kind of platform here. They lower the water shooter down so it hits the wheel here, and that's how you get through the door. Like, it's kind of cool the way that this all seems to kind of work. And again, they seem quite kind of basic as puzzles, but later on in the game, is there actually more complexity to what's going on here? So here's the puzzle trailer. So you can see here, underground, note the statue here, because they seem to highlight in the achievements for the game that constructing statues is like a kind of collectible thing in the game. Also, you'll note Paku is out here as, I guess, like an NPC. So interesting stuff. There's a bit of a kind of fire maze type thing with obviously sections where you can use water bending to affect the environment. Which could be interesting to see what way that works, because you can see here there's like a valve here to turn on. Does this turn on the fire, or does this turn on the water? And then the assumption would be that if you just make an ice pillar here, it just melts. But like, do you actually have time to like hop over it, or is it just instantaneous? You know, what way does this all work? There's an interesting air contraption, the platforms that you can rotate to get to a treasure chest, moving the blocks around. We've seen that before. It is basic, but I do wonder, does it get more complicated than this? And you can see there like an idea of like looking from one kind of almost like puzzle room into the next. Like, this could be fun. Like, I kind of like the idea of like, if most of the game is just like using the characters to solve kind of puzzles, especially if there is some actual kind of cleverness to what's going on. So there's the Toph's seismic sense back there. So that seems to be her special ability. She can find special passages that kind of lead into tunnels, I guess. And yeah, that's what they're going for there. But you'll note that they're the only other 3 trailers and footage for the game outside of the launch trailer. And all 3 of them emphasize puzzle stuff going on. Puzzle co-op. Puzzles in general. Boss puzzles. There's no combat trailer right now or anything like that, side quests or anything like that. So what's going on? It's really weird. But let's talk about the only real interview that there is about the game. So this is from Polygon. It went up last month. Quest for Balance is the Lego Star Wars of Avatar: The Last Airbender. So that's the way to view this game, is that it's more like a Lego game than it is kind of like any other type of game, which makes sense. The Lego games at their core are pretty simple in what they do. You play as the characters have a very simple set of like attack patterns and like maybe a special ability that affects the environment. You can swap between whatever characters are available, and most of what you are doing is basic combat and puzzle solving, which is what they seem to be trying to do here. And I like the Lego games. I haven't played maybe any of them in a while, but I definitely went through a period where I played quite a few of them. So like Lego Star Wars, Lego Pirates of the Caribbean, stuff like that. So if that's kind of what they're doing here, just in a non-Lego fashion for Avatar, I can see some potential in that. But let's get into what it actually has to say. So a lot of this is just the basics if you don't know about it and stuff like that, covering the key elements from the show. The developers at Bantan Games designed the game specifically to appeal to younger players who might not be as familiar with the show as some seasoned fans. So obviously the idea is the show is now 18 years old. It ended 15 years ago. You know, that has to be acknowledged. But it is an interesting thing as we go through this, that a decision was made with this game to really aim it at younger fans, and not for it to necessarily appeal just to the kind of veteran fans. So yeah, they highlight that, yeah, it's more like Lego Star Wars. The mechanics are focused on exploration and puzzle solving instead of combat, something that the developers felt was both appropriate for the intended audience and reflective of a core part of the show, just highlighting that, you know, he doesn't use violence unless strictly necessary, and that's part of the philosophy of the game. There is still combat in the game. The bending abilities are part of the show, but the team took a different approach to fights in order to make them accessible for younger players and fitting to what's going on here. So they require the players to identify weaknesses in the opponents, choose the bending abilities or moves that should defeat them, puzzle solving elements in the combat, different approaches, use the environment to your advantage. That's what's going on here. And I think that fits what we saw from the boss thing. The fact that we haven't really seen what more typical combat is, of just like, if it's just a bunch of soldiers in front of you, is it just kind of button mashing? We don't fully know. So yeah, they highlight solo, but also co-op. There are more complicated puzzles. We'll see what that actually pans out as actually being. So yeah, bending type, order of interactions is important to solve the puzzles. There should be different strategies to finding the best way to solve them. The puzzles were crafted specifically to have the right amount of challenge for younger players, while also giving the chance for like a parent or older siblings to kind of jump in. So if you are a veteran video game player, fan of the series, you shouldn't, I guess, really have too much of a problem, but we'll see what the difficulty is actually like in the final game. Now, this is an interesting thing. They actually confirm Avatar News' initial news about the game, that it would be told from the perspective of the Order of the White Lotus. So it has taken a while, but we finally have that confirmed here, of course. So yeah, Iroh, Bumi, Pakku, Piandao, and I guess the others are going to be telling the story from their perspective, and that's why the story's going to maybe look a little bit different, play out maybe slightly differently, because those characters telling the story are going to emphasize different bits and pieces. So I wonder what that means for like the structure, and like, is that how they skip over certain elements, or what? So it's an interesting one. It does mean that there is this kind of unique sort of story element to it. If you're a little bit like, I know what the story of Avatar is, what's unique? Well, we don't know what the dynamic is of like the Order of White Lotus discussing the story, so maybe they have something to say about it. Like, especially for instance, like Bumi and Pakku maybe getting an opportunity to talk about elements of the story that they weren't necessarily involved in. Could be interesting. So that's the only interview that I've seen where the developers actually talk about the game, but it definitely helps to highlight that, okay, they're really aiming it at being kids. It's meant to be almost like a Lego Star Wars-esque game. That's why it looks relatively simple. That's what they're trying to do here, to have it be this modern day, out in 2023 thing of like, hey kids, play this game from this amazing show, maybe use this to get yourself into the show, and then a year or two later the show is back with movies and shows and stuff like that. I think that's the intent here. So once it succeeds at being at least fun, it should achieve its goal of just trying to be that sort of video game entry point to Avatar. Interesting. Then we have the achievement list for the game. So I wouldn't say there's really spoilers here, because there's nothing to spoil with Avatar, but like, and ultimately I looked through it before. There's nothing super kind of crazy going on here. This mainly tells us kind of what different elements of the game there are going to be. So you can see here, finish the tutorial. Okay, so the game has a tutorial. Use seismic sense for the first time. That's Toph's ability that we saw in the trailer. Great. Katara can heal. Great. That's one of her abilities. Fantastic. On your guard, block 20 projectiles with your shield. What character has a shield? The little image icon there is of Suki. So I guess that confirms Suki is going to be a playable character. It makes sense. She is a Team Avatar member by the end of the series. Makes perfect sense. That's great. Suki fans, we are going to get to play as Suki. Wonderful. So that's great. Launch 20 enemies. So I guess Aang has an ability that can launch enemies into the air. Do it 20 times. Earthbending type thing. Trap 20 enemies. So I guess some sort of way you finish off enemies with earth is that you trap them in the ground. Cool. Fire and family. Play with a friend. One player as Zuko and one player as Iroh. So that's interesting, because they are not confirmed playable characters based on the description of the game. Now we have confirmed. So we have Aang, Sokka, Katara, Toph, Suki, Zuko, Iroh. 7 characters so far confirmed. The description says there are 9 playable characters, so who are the other 2? I don't believe the list tells us who the other 2 are. So my cabbages. Destroy the cabbage cart 10 times. So you're going to see it over the course of the story in the environment. Take it out. That it sounds like a cool collectible. I wonder, are they hidden, or are they very like out in the open? It'll be interesting to see what goes on there. Trusty boomerang. Defeat an enemy using Sokka's boomerang to deliver the final blow. Cool. Makes sense. Scroll call. Buy a bending scroll. So cool. Bending scrolls are, I guess, will be how you upgrade your bending abilities to the next level. Sounds cool. Your journey's end. Beat story mode. Perfect. Makes sense as an achievement. You called it a challenge. Beat all the spirit trials. What's a spirit trial? So I'm guessing that these are either extra things in the game, or maybe this is post-game stuff that you unlock these more like advanced puzzles or challenges to do. The fact that they're called spirit trials is interesting, in that it makes me wonder, like, okay, is this suddenly where the spirit world stuff comes into play? Or is this just a way to do kind of really out there kind of stuff, because they're maybe set in the spirit world? You can have platforms like all over the place that doesn't make sense to be in a natural environment. Who knows? So that could be cool. Statuesque, find and build all the sculptures. So you noted earlier on in the video, I pointed out like an ice sculpture. So I'm guessing there's different points to do sculptures out of different elements, which could be cool. So it just highlights there's some sort of collectibles kind of type feature thing going on of like, you know, make sure you hit everything, find all the collectibles. Can't touch me. Beat 3 bosses without getting hit. So that's just a challenge. Gangbuster Gatherer. Beat all animal races with more than 75% of coins collected. So there we go. There are going to be these animal race mini games, and you'll collect coins during them. The picture is of an otter penguin. So I guess that means that we're actually going to get to do stuff like that. So I guess early on, maybe one of the early mini games is Aang and Katara penguin sledding race type stuff. That could be very cool as we go through, because there's quite a few different animal sequences. So if if they really go in on that, that actually could be quite good. Got to touch them all. Interact with 20 different objects in the world. This, based on the picture of being a pillar of ice, seems to just be the, you know, do 20 different sort of like puzzle interactions type thing. Later Momo. Win all, beat Momo in a race challenges. So I'm guessing that means the Momo races, which I pointed out that Momo was just flying in one of the shots in the trailer. I'm guessing this means this is separate to the animal races, because there's specifically multiple, it seems like, beat Momo in a race, and then there are animal races full stop. So that's an interesting one. This is probably more of a mini game type thing, whereas I think based on what we see in the trailer, beat Momo in a race is probably just race Momo around one of the typical environments. Bending Master, learn the 4 bending arts with Aang. Makes sense. Over the course of the story, he gets the elements. Perfect sense. The gang's all here. Unlock every character. They don't say how many. I wouldn't be surprised if there maybe is more than 9. And maybe there are some kind of extra unlockable ones. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. Put out the fire. So defeat Zhao, defeat Zuko and Azula, defeat Fire Lord Ozai. That seems like your kind of classic, probably like main book 1 boss, main book 2 boss, main book 3 boss type thing. Defeat a boss with Aang with all perks and bending moves maxed out. So here we get confirmation that each character has perks, but also bending moves that can be maxed out. So there are different levels to their bending, but there are also different levels to their perks. So yeah, unlock all the perks for characters. Find all secret rooms and treasure rooms. So you are going to have to scour the environment to find these different rooms and treasure areas, which is kind of cool. Open all the chests and finish all the side quests. So what's a side quest in that game? Are they new story elements, or will certain side quests be some of the less important episodes of the show? It'll be interesting to see how they work, because of course we saw that, say, like Pakku was just out in the environment there. I think even the shot of Yue was definitely an in-game shot of Yue, where it seems like you can walk up to her and maybe get a quest from her. So it maybe speaks to the fact that in certain areas, like say Agna Kel-A, that is maybe set just prior to the final battle, and that you can get these extra kind of bits of story that happen kind of in between episodes. But we'll have to wait and see what's going on there. But that definitely gives us a sense of like, okay, there's some stuff going on here. There will be minigame type stuff throughout this. There will be a little bit of kind of RPG upgrading characters going on here. And then there's a little bit of a mystery about who the other 2 playable characters are. Because again, it specifies 9 characters. And of course, we know it's going to be, what, full Team Avatar plus Iroh. But then who are the other 2? Because that would then leave out the idea that you can play as Mai, Ty Lee, and Azula. So Mai and Ty Lee only, and then Azula is just kind of kept as like an enemy, a villain for the whole thing. That would seem like the most obvious thing. Might it be like Pakku and Bumi, because you can already play as Iroh and bring in the Order of the White Lotus characters, but that leaves out Zhang Zhang potentially. I'm not sure. It feels like what's needed based on the characters that we have there probably is maybe some more non-benders. So I don't know, maybe they might let you play as like Ty Lee specifically, and then the other character is just, say, like another like Earthbender or something like that, because the character lineup might get a little bit too focused down kind of one path or another, and who knows, there might be more characters to unlock as well. Because if they're going for the whole Lego idea, I think the whole hype around Lego games is that they have like every character from whatever franchise they're in, whereas they're only highlighting 9 characters here. So I don't know, I'll be very interesting to play the game and come out of it and kind of feel like if they went full Lego style on this game, and it's like, yeah, just give us every Bender in the series, let us do it that way. That seems like a cool idea, honestly, to me. But you know, kind of wrapping it up here, I feel somewhat excited for this game because as an Avatar fan, we don't get video games that often. The last video game, of course, is the mobile game Avatar Generations, but the last proper game before that was the 2014 or 2013 Korra video game, which was good. I liked it, but you know, was nearly 10 years ago at this point. And then before that, it was the games that came out in or around Book 3, Into the Inferno, I think is what they called them. And they're old at this point, and they only covered Book 3. They didn't cover like Book 1 and 2. This is the first time we're getting an Avatar game covering the entire story, and it feels like we're getting the game that we missed out on at the end of the series. So in that sense, even if it does feel a little old school as a game, I'm kind of just excited to do that. Go through the story, play as the characters, something we haven't really gotten to experience all that much. And as an Avatar-focused channel, this is the perfect thing to do a little bit of content on. Even if the game doesn't turn out to be that great, I think I am going to get some fun, some enjoyment out of this, just because it's a notable thing for Avatar that is happening during a couple of weeks where there doesn't seem to be that much happening. We are just waiting for basically New York Comic Con and hopefully some comic news, and then the Azula comic to come out at the end of October. This will be a notable thing to focus on at the end of this week, into next week, and hopefully a little bit onwards after that. And that's the way I definitely view it, is that, yes, I do want a more ambitious Avatar game, but I don't think we are going to get that until 2025 and afterwards. And the absolute success of Avatar Studios and the fact that like Avatar is continuing is like assured. Then I think we'll get the big Avatar game we've maybe been waiting for, in one of the kind of genres or styles of games that we more probably want for this. Some sort of a big open world type thing, open world RPG style thing, where you can explore the world, maybe you can create your own character, that style of thing, that the big broad game that people really want to just like, that has the full world building in it. That's the dream for the future, but I think we need the franchise to get to the point where it's back at the level it kind of theoretically can be at before that stuff happens. Sure, this probably still doesn't feel like it's even at the level it maybe should be right now, but it's not a full price game, and I'm hoping to get some enjoyment out of it. That's what I'm going into this with. I think this game probably does have a ceiling of, like, it would be amazing if this got like 7s in review score, 7 out of 10s, but probably will have to be happy enough if it gets 6s, and just hope that like it's not like filled with bugs. Hope that it actually has some depth to it. I know there's some concern about like, oh, what's like voice acting? What's that going to be like? We basically know it's not going to have the original voices. It's probably going to have new voice actors, probably the same people as that did Avatar Generations, which aren't fantastic. But the voice acting in this video game is kind of super low on my priorities right now. Again, that's, I think, for the future, to see things evolve and where they go. Like the voice acting improving and getting like the games that we really kind of want. This is just a factor of this game is coming 15 years after the fact. Aang's voice actor is not a voice actor anymore. Like they weren't going to be able to get kind of new dialogue for him. So there's stuff like that is a factor that has to be factored in. So there's the kind of end of the preview here. So like I said, I'll be getting this game. There's a chance I maybe get the game Thursday, but I definitely should have some sort of content live stream for Friday. So definitely check that out on the channel when it goes live. Again, I'll schedule it later on, closer to the time. But otherwise, in the comments, let me know what your thoughts are heading into Quest for Balance. Are you going to be getting it? Are you going to be waiting for reviews? Or what? I personally, factoring in everything that we've seen here, have a little bit of a kind of sense of like, okay, now I know based on the interview that it's meant to be more of a Lego style game, leaning more in the kind of puzzle exploration side of things. And I'm kind of like, okay, I'll see how that goes. It looks like a sort of interesting style of game you don't see that often. And that's kind of unique in a way just by itself. But yes, I do think ultimately so much of this is being carried purely on the franchise and the hope that as an Avatar fan it turns out good. But, you know, that's just the way it is. So let me know what your thoughts are on this game, but that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.